Sex has been a part of human life since the beginning. From the moment someone wanted sex and couldn't get it because they were lonely, shy, rejected, bored, or wanted something their partner didn't, people started paying for it. By the time ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome show up in the record, prostitution is already fully established. Unofficially, society called it low class. In reality, the biggest customers were often wealthy, married men, the same men who shaped the laws, controlled the politics, and publicly condemned the very thing they used in private themselves. The Netherlands wasn't any different. Prostitution was used and judged. Even 150 years ago, Amsterdam tolerated the red light streets, while most respectable burghers still looked down on the people working there. How do we get from that mindset to a country that regulates it, tolerates it, and in many ways treats it as perfectly normal? Hey, hoi, welcome to the Dutch door. Kom maar in. Ga je mee? If you zoomed out on Amsterdam's map, the canals, the harbour, the tight medieval streets, particularly the harbour, you can see why prostitution showed up early. The city lived off sailors, traders, and visitors, and wherever they appeared, the sex trade followed. By the late Middle Ages, Amsterdam already had hoerenhuizen and badstoven, bathhouses that basically functioned as early brothels. The church considered it sinful, but still tolerated it. The thinking was old. Prostitution was necessary to protect respectable women from rape and harassment. That was the logic. So the city didn't ban it managed it, sort of. In 1413, Amsterdam even passed a rule that punished a bathhouse/brothel owner who let an unmarried man and woman sleep together. Amsterdam also introduced a law that sounds insane today. If a woman labeled as living a light life was caught eating with a man who wasn't her husband, she could lose an ear. Not a fine, an ear. In the medieval Dutch context, eating with a man literally meant sharing a meal or being in his company in a socially intimate way. Nothing sexual in the language itself. But this was a punishment you carried on your face for the rest of your life. No parole, no second chance, just a permanent mark that told everyone who you were. So much for the tolerant Netherlands of the Middle Ages. But this all fits a larger historical pattern. Prostitution existed in almost every known society, but the documentation varies. In ancient Egypt, there's evidence of sex work, but not as much as people assume. Some papyri and Greek accounts describe tavern workers and entertainers linked to prostitution, but Egyptian sources themselves are limited. It likely existed, but the details are kind of thin. And in Greece, the evidence is solid. Athens had state-run brothels, pournai, private courtesans, hetarai, and clear legal regulations. The Greek world documented the sex trade openly. In Rome, even more documented. Rome licensed brothels, taxed sex workers, and kept records. Historians have legal texts, inscriptions, and literary descriptions that describe it directly. Eurasian steppes? Here the evidence is weak. Nomadic societies didn't leave written records, and most information comes from outsiders like Persians, Chinese, or later Russians, none of which clearly describe organized prostitution. Exchange of sex for goods probably did happen, but nothing confirms a structured industry. After the Reformation in 1578, Amsterdam outlawed prostitution, but the city was booming. Ships came in, taverns filled up, and sailors poured in. Demand never dropped, so sex work simply shifted to back rooms, music houses, and inns. It didn't disappear, it just went underground. During the 18th century, moral pressure intensified. Madams were dragged into the street for public shaming. Brothels were raided, closed, and then quietly reopened. New forms emerged: discreet wine houses, small private rooms, and hidden bawdy houses. By the early 1800s, Amsterdam was full of these semi-secret setups. Under French rule, the city introduced regulation. Prostitutes had to register, carry a red card, and undergo medical checks. After independence, Amsterdam kept the system: permits, police involvement, paperwork, and plenty of corruption. Brothels adapted, rebranded themselves as hotels or lodging houses, and continued operating. In the late 1800s, beginning 1900s, religious and moral groups pushed the city to shut brothels for good. Amsterdam eventually banned official brothels in 1897 and again in 1902. Sex work moved into apartments, the street, and behind curtains. And this period laid the groundwork for the modern red light district style. Women used windows to signal they were working without running a formal brothel. In the 20th century, Amsterdam's attitude swung between enforcement and tolerance. Eventually, the city accepted reality. Prostitution wasn't going anywhere. By the late 20th century, it became legal, regulated, and very Amsterdam, placed right in plain view. When Amsterdam changed the law, it didn't just legalize the work, it legalized where it could happen. Before regulation, most of it took place in alleys and back streets, dim corners or private homes where no one could see anything. If something went wrong, it stayed hidden. This shift didn't happen overnight. In the 60s and 70s, under Mayor Ivo Kalden, Amsterdam started pushing the activity out of alleys and illegal back rooms and into visible, regulated spaces. It wasn't moral approval, it was a practical cleanup. The goal was to replace the chaos of the old harbour district with something safer and more manageable. Other countries saw the same reality and somehow chose the exact opposite policy. Instead of making things safer, most of those decisions made everything more chaotic. Sweden and Norway look open-minded from a distance, but their laws take the exact opposite approach of the Netherlands. Since 1999, Sweden criminalizes the buyer, not the seller. Norway copied it. Sounds protective, but it pushes everything underground again. Hidden apartments, intermediaries, fewer eyes on the street. The work doesn't stop, it just becomes harder to regulate and far less safe. France banned brothels in 1946, France of all places, and later adopted the Nordic model too. Buyers are criminalized, sellers aren't. But once buyers hide, the whole system hides with them. Less visibility always means less control. And Spain is its own category. The work isn't illegal, but it's not regulated either. No licensing, no inspections, no health framework. That's why in cities like Córdoba or Madrid, you see a lot of street activity. There's no structure around it. Not banned like France, not regulated like the Netherlands. Just kind of a gray zone nobody really controls. And then there's North America. It wasn't always strict. In the 1800s, red light districts existed openly in frontier towns, mining camps, and major cities. But between 1890 and 1920, everything flipped. Temperance activists, religious reformers, and moral panic pushed governments into full prohibition. By the 1920s, almost everywhere in the US and Canada had criminalized both buyer and seller. Everything went underground, hidden, unregulated, and unsafe. Canada later shifted to a softer version of the Nordic model, but in practice it still keeps the work invisible. The US never changed, except for a few rural counties in Nevada. Compared to Amsterdam's visible, regulated, highly monitored system, North America runs on denial, and denial creates shadows. Fast forward to modern Amsterdam. The picture looks completely different from the old chaos. The city didn't just legalize it, it built a system around it. Windows are licensed, workspaces are inspected, there's health access, there are rules, contracts, and actual enforcement. No moral enforcement, just practical enforcement. The whole idea is very Dutch. If something exists anyway, design the safest version of it. Put it in the open, make it visible, regulated, and boringly bureaucratic. That's why the red light district today feels so surreal to outsiders. It's not hidden, not underground, not a back alley mystery. It's right there in the middle of the city, under neon lights and next to a canal. Does crime still happen? Of course it does. Crime happens everywhere. But the system removes the shadows, less hiding, more oversight, more control. Let's end by discussing this Nordic idea that the buyer is the guilty one, the culprit, and the seller deserves protection. It sounds kind of noble, but let's really think about it. If an adult woman chooses this work, fully aware, fully consenting, and doing it because it pays better than $15 an hour at Starbucks, who is the government actually protecting? Because in practice, she's the one losing autonomy. It's basically the state saying, we don't like this job, so we won't let you choose it. But we don't do that with other risky jobs. We don't tell people, hey, you're not allowed to be a soldier, you can't be a firefighter, you can't work offshore, or you can't become an astronaut. It's too dangerous. We regulate risk. We don't erase the profession. So why is this the one where choice suddenly doesn't count? And yes, abuse exists. Exploitation exists. It absolutely does, but isn't that exactly what the law should target? The abuse, the coercion, the exploitation. The people who force, threaten, or manipulate, not the people who choose. Because when you criminalize the buyer or criminalize the entire environment, what happens? You don't eliminate the work, you eliminate the safety. And that's the real debate here. If adults are allowed to choose every other risky profession on the planet, why is this the only one where we pretend they don't know what they're doing?